In this video, you'll learn how you can use Data Integration Elastic to run data integration jobs in a fully managed environment. Let's see how Data Integration Elastic works. One use case we can solve with Data Integration Elastic is building a data lake in the cloud. We want to go all in on operational efficiency and agility. We want a way to focus on business logic without things like operational overhead and coding skills, taking our time away from development. To build a data lake, we go through three main steps. First, we ingest the data into the cloud to make the data available to developers. Then we prepare and enrich the data using Data Integration Elastic. Finally, we consume the data, using it to create actionable insights for our enterprise. To ingest the data into the cloud, we can use mass ingestion to transfer our data to a cloud repository. Once our data is in the cloud, we can prepare and enrich the data using Data Integration Elastic. First, we'll install and configure the secure agent on our cloud platform. Then we'll move on to Administrator to create an Elastic configuration. In data integration, we'll create an Elastic mapping and a mapping task, and run the mapping task on an Elastic cluster. Finally, we'll turn to Monitor, where we can watch our solution run. First, we'll install the secure agent on a Linux virtual machine on our cloud platform, and configure the agent with a minimal set of permissions to create or deploy an Elastic cluster. For any other prerequisites on our cloud platform, we'll make sure to stay up to date with the latest documentation. Now let's move on to Administrator. In Administrator, we go to the Elastic Clusters page to create an Elastic configuration. The configuration is a set of properties that define how cloud resources are provisioned for the Elastic cluster. When we create the configuration, we associate it with the runtime environment that contains the secure agent we just installed. Some of the resources we need are virtual machines that can host cluster nodes, staging and log locations, and reserved disk space. We can also define how large or small a cluster can get in response to our workload. Now let's switch to data integration. Let's select New and create an Elastic mapping. In the Mapping Designer, we configure the Elastic mapping in Designer Business Logic. Just remember that Elastic mappings may support a limited number of sources, targets, transformations, and functions. Next, let's create a mapping task based on the mapping. We can select the runtime environment that's associated with the Elastic configuration we created. Now that we have a mapping task, we can run the task to process the business logic. As soon as we run the task, the secure agent creates or deploys an Elastic cluster based on our cloud platform, and the Serverless Spark engine runs on the cluster to process the underlying mapping in the mapping task. We can head over to My Jobs to begin monitoring the job. Here we can see the job details. We can also see that the job is split into multiple Spark tasks. Next, let's find the Elastic cluster. Let's head over to Monitor and open the Elastic Clusters page. Here we can see the running cluster. We can click the instance to open the activity log, where we can see how the secure agent automatically gets a cluster up and running to begin processing the job. Over the course of the cluster lifecycle, we can also see how cluster nodes are provisioned and deprovisioned so that cluster resources match the demand for resources at any given point in time. When all of our jobs complete and the cluster reaches its idle timeout, the activity log shows us that the agent has stopped the cluster. We can also look at the lifecycle graph to see how the number of cluster nodes changes over time. On the Configuration tab, we can view the Elastic configuration that was used to create the cluster. Finally, we see the running jobs on the cluster, including the same job we just ran. Now that we've seen how we can use Data Integration Elastic, let's summarize some of the ways that it made it easier for us to build our cloud data lake. Data Integration Elastic reduced our operational costs. The only thing we had to do was set up a secure agent and an Elastic configuration, and the agent creates or deploys the Elastic cluster for us. If we want to process more or less data, cluster resources are provisioned and deprovisioned accordingly. We also didn't need any coding skills. Data Integration Elastic makes it simple for developers to start creating mappings and building solutions right away. Finally, we saw how we can take advantage of consumption-based pricing. Once the data has been processed, the agent stops the cluster, so we pay only for the resources we use. For more information, you can check out some of the documentation for the detailed steps to get your solutions up and running.